Welcome to Her Discovered Power, the podcast where we try to provide every single good hearted woman tools and knowledge that can empower and free you from so many of the emotional aspects that impact you most, from our earliest teachings and societal implications. I'm Dave Jones with Captive Coaching and Empowerment, and this is my mission and my passion because of what I've seen happen with the women in my life, including my own mother. We're here to help you be the she that you were meant to be. Hope you follow us, hope you share us, and hope you enjoy the episode.
Well, good morning, David, and welcome back to Her Discovered Power. I'm really glad everyone's here today because we're going to dive into a topic that touches nearly every woman I know, even the ones that appear confident and put together. We're talking about healthy boundaries and why those can feel so uncomfortable when you first start setting them. Have you ever said no and immediately afterwards feel like a wave of guilt? Have you ever asked for space and then worried that you've hurt somebody's feelings? Or have you protected your time, your energy, or what you need, and then questioned whether that made you selfish in someone else's eyes? Well, you're not alone. I mean, we all feel that way, and you're not doing anything wrong. So today we're going to unpack why that discomfort shows up. What is it really signaling? And how to move through it in a way that strengthens your self trust without shrinking yourself or abandoning your own needs in the process. So, David, let's dig into it.
Well, as always, Sherry, thank you for doing this with me. This is a powerful topic. And I 100% agree with you, Sherry. This impacts all of the good hearted women that we are seeking to reach. So let's start with a moment that we all might recognize. You finally work up the courage to set a boundary, right? Like you were mentioning, and maybe you tell a friend that you can't help them this weekend. Or maybe you decide you're not going to answer work messages after 7 p.m. because you're trying to institute some self-care, right? Maybe you ask a partner, like you just said, for some space or not to speak to you in a certain way and to give you the credit, maybe for something that you said as an opinion or an idea for how to do something. And for that split second, you feel proud, you feel empowered, clear. But then that discomfort hits.
Yeah, guilt, anxiety, second guessing. Was that too much, you ask? You're asking yourself, did I hurt their feelings? Should I have just said yes? Sometimes I just feel mean or like I was too gruff with them.
Yeah, and we can go back and forth, can't we? It's almost like an emotional whiplash or a roller coaster. And that sensation and that feeling is incredibly common, Sherry. And there's a reason for it. And let me ask you this, Sherry. Would you say this subject, you mentioned before that it's common among women, but do you think that it's more women than men, or do you think it's equally prevalent between the two sexes?
Hmm. I mean, I think it's present for both, but I would say women experience it more often and probably more deeply. We're conditioned to prioritize harmony over honesty. So I think when we set boundaries, like we're being difficult or rude and really just trying to be authentic.
I would 100% agree. And part of the reason I think that it is way more prevalent for women is because it's been my experience that it's a smaller percentage of men who are willing to be vulnerable, willing to look into themselves, to do self examination and seek personal development, which all requires a level of authenticity, right? Men will absolutely, good hearted men will absolutely experience the same sentiment, but I do think that it's a much smaller percentage. Sherry, we've discussed it before because it impacts so many aspects of our emotionality, and that is some of our old conditioning, right?
Yeah, from childhood. What's baked in.
Exactly. I love it when you talk about it being baked in because most of us didn't really grow up in environments where boundaries were really modeled in healthy ways. And maybe we learned that saying no was rude, right? Maybe we knew that we were expected to be easygoing, or how about flexible or self sacrificing? That's the big one. Sure, we might have been expect it to be easygoing, meaning that we'll accept anything, even though we might not have enjoyed it. But self sacrificing, that's a big one for so many of our women. Maybe even one of our listeners were taught to keep the peace at all costs. Maybe not vocally, Sherry, but that's what they learned to be their role, right? So now, as an adult, when we set a boundary, our nervous system reacts like we're breaking a rule because in childhood, we would have been.
So, what you're saying is our body isn't responding to the present moment, it's responding to old conditioning or outdated programming, something we learned that we should do.
Well, we on this show over our previous seasons, we've referenced our triggers a number of times. And one things that our emotional triggers do, it really brings us back to an earlier time in our life where we had kind of like an automatic and automated response. And that's why we feel so uncomfortable. It's not only foreign to us to apply them now, and we're not only breaking rules that we were taught, whether or not, again, whether we were officially taught or we learned by modeling, but we are also disregarding our parents or our caretakers' perspective, right? And it's that unconscious emotional allegiance that we've discussed on a number of other episodes. But it's that allegiance where we're supposed to do, and when we have the shoulds or the supposed to, it really has an impact on our actions as well as our emotionality. And Sherry, there's another reason our listeners need to go back and make sure that they listen to all of our other episodes because so much of this kind of ties together when we talk about guilt or shame, right? I hate to make it sound like everybody, we're promoting ourselves, but we are because we want them to get all of the information as possible.
And I think it's true. Everything is connected and it's layered. And I find even the more episodes we do together, the stronger my own healing becomes. So I agree with you.
With this episode, another big reason that boundaries feel really hard or difficult to, impart is because they can trigger a fear of internal conflict or rejection. And that's really the result of that conflict of breaking the rules or being not what we were expected by our parents and caretakers. And Sherry, what does fear stand for again in my coaching?
Frequent exposure to analysis and rejection.
For all of our listeners, the reason that that resonates so much for me, and I developed that terminology years ago to help my clients realize really where emotional fear started from, right? And Sherry, you're exactly right. Exactly. You see, we're always built in childhood, before childhood. It's just automatic within us that we're really meant to have a connection to others and to be part of a group to become accepted because that was a protection mechanism that's really innate within us. Historically, being excluded from a group was dangerous. Sherry, we never liked it as a child. We never really enjoy it as an adult. So even today, our emotional minds treat rejection like a threat. And we can interpret, like we referenced on a recent episode, that even exclusion, even though it's not intentional rejection, exclusion can be interpreted by us as rejection and thus a threat. So when we set a boundary, even a small one, Sherry, our emotional brain might kind of whisper to ourselves, oh, they're going to be mad at me, right? Maybe they'll think I don't care about them, or maybe they'll leave me. But here's the truth. Healthy relationships can tolerate boundaries, can't they, Sherry?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely can. I do know, though, when I first started setting boundaries, I did feel like there was pushback.
Isn't that interesting? Because one of the other things about healthy relationships is that not only can they tolerate boundaries, but those relationships that can't tolerate boundaries usually indicate that they're unhealthy,
Mm. It was an unhealthy relationship.
right? Because the unhealthy relationships, ladies, depend on you not having any boundaries. Now, Sherry, Do you have any experience with any of this that you've experienced yourself or maybe seen in others where somebody tried to set and uphold their boundaries? And I know you do have a couple of examples, but I don't know if you feel comfortable in sharing them.
As we were just talking about, I was in a toxic relationship. And when I first started setting boundaries, there was a pushback from it. But I had to keep reminding myself that I matter too. I think that this really highlighted and rooted out who was healthy for me, who was mutually caring, and which ones were just in my life out of convenience.
Fantastic. Yeah. When you say that I matter too, I think that's a common sentiment that many of our listeners would like to feel and hopefully experience and believe most of the time. But I would like to echo that a lot of the time, ladies, we have to decide that we matter more,
Oh,
not only to or in addition to our partner, but maybe more often than our partner. And the reason I say that is because, Sherry, if we're good hearted and we're pure spirited people, meaning we only care first and foremost about being a good person and being good to everyone around us, then us looking out for ourselves will include looking out for those who appreciate and respect us.
hmm.
Every relationship really has a rhythm or a pattern. By and large, we've spent our entire youth and adult lives training those in our lives exactly how we will act or react to any given situation. In that training, we do it so much so that our family or our spouses typically know what or how we will react to a circumstance more accurately, sometimes or often more so than we know how we would ourselves. Maybe we've always been the fixer. Maybe we're the helper, the one who says yes, or the one who absorbs the emotional load and tries to hold that for everybody else. Whatever our roles have been, when we start setting boundaries, we disrupt that rhythm and we go against that training, and people notice, don't they, Sherry?
They do. I guess it's like changing the rules of the game, halfway through. How they react will be a good indicator on whether it's healthy or not. Is that what you're saying?
Most definitely, in a number of other episodes, you have experience and have shared with us both positive aspect and outcomes as well as negative outcomes of applying boundaries. Like in a recent episode, Sherry, you expressed what happens when you start to apply those positive boundaries and how people will react to you, right?
It's very interesting. I mean, some people want to be near me more, hang out with me more. Depends on who I'm talking to, right?
100%. That's why I tell every single person that I start to work with that they need to tell the people in their lives who, those that they want to remain in their lives as they anticipate going down a healthy pattern and discovering themselves to really experience self empowerment and self awareness. I tell them, you've got to let all of those people know that you're embarking on this path with me because they're going to see changes, changes for growth that are different from what those people would normally expect. I tell my clients it's really just unfair not to give them the heads up, if you will, beforehand because we're going to be seeming like we're changing those game rules, just like you said. And if we don't do that, we're really not being fair to the relationship because, like you said, Sherry, some will adjust, right?
Hmm.
Some will resist, some will test the boundary, and some will accuse you of changing, at least for those who hadn't been warned. Some would say that we're changing, but I'd really like everybody to really understand we're not so much changing, we're growing because that's really what it is. I think, Sherry, when that happens, we're out of that old role and we're letting them all know that our new role is being authentic to who we are because we were previously addicted to the role that we had been playing. But Is that old role sustainable?
You're right. It's comfortable. We've been in that role for so long, but no, it's definitely not sustainable. I think it drains us of our true identity.
Bingo. And that discomfort you feel is what?
I think it's the tension of who we've been and who we're trying to become.
Oh, I love that. That is absolutely perfectly put.
Yeah, I think if you're used to putting everybody else first, prioritizing yourself can feel wrong, even if it's healthy. And I remember I felt selfish. I felt guilty. I felt like maybe I'm even letting people down. It's uncomfortable at first.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Sherry. Here's how we got to kind of reframe it, right? And how we would really benefit to look at it. Boundaries aren't about controlling others, are they?
No.
That's exactly right. They're not just about, it's nothing to do with controlling others. It's more about managing our own energy, our own time, and that emotional bandwidth that we are willing to take on so that we're in control of how we spend any of that and not being controlled by others and how we spend it for them. Because self respect often feels uncomfortable before it feels natural.
That's powerful because I feel like boundaries can sometimes reveal truths in others that we aren't ready to see. So that is very powerful. I mean, some people benefit from our lack of boundaries. I feel like people who respect us, like you said before, they're gonna adjust. And people who only valued us for what we provided, they're gonna fall away. If they genuinely care, they're gonna want us to feel safe and supported.
100%, Sherry.
Hmm.
And what I love to say is that boundaries don't ruin relationships ever, they reveal them.
That's a good one. I love it.
And Sherry, as you know, setting and holding boundaries is a skill, not a personality trait. We aren't born with it. We aren't born with that ability. And it's hard to do at the beginning and takes practice, wouldn't you say?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's a learning curve and constant practice. I'm still doing it.
Do you think our listeners are supposed to be good at them right away? I mean, yeah, we say that it's difficult and we say that it takes practice, but do you figure doing it two or three times makes them an expert?
It didn't for me. I don't think we're supposed to be good at it right away. I think it takes a lot of effort. I think early on, you'll over explain, you'll apologize, you'll second guess yourself, you'll feel awkward. I think it's all part of the learning.
Love that, Sherry. And when we set and hold to the boundaries, because after all, everybody, setting them does zero benefit if we don't hold to the boundaries, right?
Right.
It's kind of like making a reservation for a car. An old Seinfeld episode is like, yeah, you took the reservation, but you didn't hold the reservation. If I don't have a car available, it doesn't matter that I made a reservation. So it's the same thing with boundaries. And no, we're making it sound funny, but it's true because almost every single client at the beginning will say, well, I told them my boundary, but they didn't follow it. Well, then we aren't holding to the boundary, are we? Because it's easy to set them. The difficulty is the applying of consequences when the boundaries are broken. Wouldn't you agree, Sherry?
Absolutely. I think this all applies to parenting too, because sometimes it's hard to hold those boundaries with your kids too.
Oh, absolutely. It applies to our child rearing as well as any other of our romantic or even platonic or work relationships. It's a circumstance where over time, if we do not apply them religiously and repetitively and become excellent at it, when we do apply them properly and we start maintaining them, the things that we were talking about before that you referenced, for instance, the guilt fades. Once we become more normalized at being able to apply those boundaries, we do no longer feel guilty. We start to feel more confident, and the boundaries start to feel like self-care instead of confrontation.
I think it becomes part of your new fabric and you don't feel the need to defend yourself anymore.
100%. I like to think of boundaries as kind of like starting a new workout regimen. We go to the gym and we're supposed to work our triceps or quads or whatever muscle you want to talk about. But the soreness doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong when you wake up the next day and can barely walk. It means we're using the muscles that we haven't used before, right?
Yeah.
Right? And we have to really look at it that way because we have to remind ourselves that those exercises are there for a reason. We need to use them every single day so that our muscles, whether or not it's physically in the gym or our emotional muscles, become worked out and become normalized. Sherry, I had a client years ago who I'm now training to be a coach who knew she needed reminders of the boundaries she was setting in her life. And we worked together to form her plan based on what she wanted to be able to require in her life. And Sherry, she taped that boundary list, which as the pool rules in my coaching. She taped that list of boundaries to her bathroom mirror so she'd see it every morning and every day. Interestingly, Sherry, she was one of the few clients that lived near me, so I'd meet her at her house instead of over the phone or virtually. And I arrived for a session and she dragged me into the kitchen one day. That list was now taped to her fridge. Her boundary list was right there for everybody to see because she decided she wanted every person coming to that house, her adult children, her friends, to see that boundary list because now she was proud of it. And to this day, she considers that really one of the big momentous occasions in her life. It was powerful.
I love that. That's a great example. And it's a really good example of the discomfort means you're getting better. Because first she hid it in her bathroom, and then now she has it on her refrigerator. It's like, this is me.
Right? Without a single bit of shame and absolutely total level of empowerment.
Yeah. Yeah. She got past the soreness.
That's exactly right. And it became part of her normal regimen, right?
Yeah. This is a really good one, David. When we walk away from this episode, what do you want us to think about?
I'd really love everybody to really understand that not only the discomfort that we feel when we start setting and applying boundaries is the emotional soreness, but it is also the major sign of growth, not danger. You're building strength, ladies. Strength that you already have. You're merely awakening them within your emotional muscles. Strength that you have, strength that you are deserving of, and strength that you are deserving of to utilize for your emotional health and emotional safety. You're building clarity. You're building clarity so that you can see and you can feel exactly what you're wanting in the future, what you want for your world, what you're wanting for your child, if you have one that this is applying to, what you want for your relationships, platonic, romantic, or business wise. You're building the clarity so that you can be very understanding and clear on what you desire. And as a reminder, because you're good hearted, you're never going to choose desires that harm others. You're going to be choosing desires that you are benefiting from, and so will others. We've talked about the self care in previous episodes, Sherry, where you're specifically talking about going to the gym and how it not only benefits you and your sanity and your safety of stress, but that it benefits your child when you come home, our relationships, right? So, ladies, we're not only doing that, we're also building the healthier relationships because of all of the reasons that we just talked about. But it also includes building the healthier relationship with ourselves. And if this resonates with you, I really would encourage every listener to build upon what we're talking about on boundaries today. One of the ways that we can build upon that is not only checking out our website, but check out the episode of Pool Rules in season 2. Sherry knows very well because one thing that I go through with every single one of my clients, the pool is an acronym that Sherry teases me because I always love my acronyms. But pool stands for our primary occurrence of learning. One of the things, Sherry, that we've been talking about today is that conditional training that we got early on that we're having to break free from. That, ladies, is our primary occurrence of learning. I train my clients to envision having this community pool of yours that you get to choose who comes in. So listen to that episode so that you get a feel for not only the empowerment to allow you to be the one to decide who comes into your life, but also to decide what you will accept from those who are already in your life and how to eliminate those who do not accept what you require. That is the start and maybe a large portion of what we constantly talk about and hear about, and that is self care. Right, Sherry?
Hmm. I think you really hit on a big point too. As a good hearted person, I have to remind myself constantly that I'm not making a bad decision and I'm not being selfish. I don't need to justify or explain myself to be worthy of respect. I'm not being dramatic. I'm not doing it wrong. And boundaries are invitations to a healthier, more honest relationship with people, and including the one you have with yourself. It does feel uncomfortable, but that means you're doing it right and to stick with it. The discomfort will pass and you're building self trust that will last.
Love that. It's so important. And it is absolutely imperative that we all grasp onto that because, as good hearted people, there are a lot of people who are going to try to and have been maybe for a lot of our lives been utilizing their boundaries against us. So to be that healthy individual for the benefit of ourselves, like you just said, Sherry, and for all of those in our lives that we want in our lives, it's just huge. Sherry, I'd like to say one other thing. One of the sayings or the quotes that I've referenced a number of times, and it's hugely favored by you as well as a lot of my clients. I've never been able to find out who wrote it, but when you're not used to being confident, ladies, confidence feels like arrogance. And when we're used to being passive, assertiveness feels like aggression. When we're not used to getting our needs met, prioritizing ourselves feels selfish. The end result of this is our comfort zones are not a good benchmark. What we're used to is not necessarily what is good for us. Right, Sherry?
That's a good one. Yeah, I love that. Thank you, everyone, for spending time with us today. And I really encourage everyone to just keep choosing yourself.
Love it. And as always, Sherry, I'm so thankful that you're here to help me do this podcast. And ladies, we are here to try to help every one of our listeners become the she that you were meant to be. For Sherry and I, this is Dave Jones with Captive Coaching and Empowerment for her discovered power. Thanks, Sherry. I'll see you next time.
Thank you, David.